Hey, it's Lauren. Thank you so much for listening to The Afterlight. Enjoy the episode. This episode has been brought to you by the Raw Spirit Team. Building a business can be overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be. We teach small and medium-sized businesses strategies for building a profitable, successful, stress-free business and life. Because guess what? You are more than your business. Through one-on-one training, online courses, and monthly guest experts, the Spirit Team is built on the principle of building each other up in business and in spirit. Try it for 14 days for free. Just head to rawconsulting.com and check out the Raw Spirit Team. Hey, it's Lauren Grace here, and welcome to The Afterlight. My guest today is Pamela S. Alexander. Pamela, a PhD, is a passionate poet, an artist, a dream worker, and a personal spiritual growth advocate on a lifelong mission to expand people's consciousness and help them to reach greater heights. Currently, she leverages an embodied, compassionate approach to assist her clients in tapping into the infinite wisdom within their own dreamscapes to align with their soul's deepest longings. The intention of her dream work is to free the soul to live its true purpose, a life with meaning and passion. Whether it's a self-development course, poetry book, or fairy tale, she utilizes the power of words to instill a message of healing, love, and hope, and total life transformation. Pamela is joining me to talk about all things dreamy. Hi, Pamela. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
I love your bio. It's beautiful, and it made me feel kind of excited, I guess, like a childlike excitement when I read it.
Well, that's cool, because that's really how I feel, and you'll see that as we talk about dreams, is ever since I first started working with them and started to understand them, I should say, I developed this passion for it, because it's just, I shouldn't say never, but not very frequently do I come across anyone who really understands the full magnitude of dreams and dreaming and what they can do for you. It's even reading in books and hearing other people talk about it. Lots of times they kind of niche down, and it's like for psychology, it's for self-development, it's for, lucid dreaming. But for me, it's like an adventure. And so it does have that feeling of like uncovering treasure and looking inside and discovering all kinds of really interesting things. So
yeah, that's so cool. I love it. We have so much to discuss. I can't wait to get into it. But before we do, kind of talk about, dreaming, whether or not dreams have significant meanings. I know that you've talked about connecting with deceased loved ones in dreams. I really would like to know a little bit about sort of how your spiritual journey began, because I'm under the impression it happened when you were around the age of 30. And I think you had a direct encounter with the void, which I'm not really sure I understand that terminology. So I would really like to hear that in your own words, if you wouldn't mind talking about that.
Sure. What ended up happening was I woke up in the morning, and I was 30, and I had pulled a muscle in my back in the night. And it's one of those things, like, you don't realize how important certain muscles are for certain activities until they don't work. And then all of a sudden you realize how critical they are. Yeah. So this muscle that was pulled was the muscle that you use to push yourself up, to sit up. And so I struggled for, I don't know how long, trying to get myself out of bed. And at one point I was married at the time, and I called my husband and I said, can you just get me a drink of water, because I was feeling really thirsty. And I thought, well, I'm going to go to the bathroom. And as I walked to the bathroom, I just started to feel really kind of funny inside. And I looked in the mirror when I got into the bathroom, and my face was white. And I was like, oh, this is weird. I'm going to lay down on the floor. And so what ended up happening was, halfway to the floor, I fainted. But I've fainted in the past. And what happens when I have fainted in the past is you just don't remember anything. It's like
Oh.
everything goes dark and then the lights come on and you don't remember anything in between. But this particular time, I was conscious. And so the only way I could ever describe it was some part of my brain was unconscious. And that part of the brain that was unconscious was Pam. So my identity ceased to exist in that moment. I ceased to exist. So there was a voice, and the voice said, "Who am I?" And I was like, "I don't know." And the voice said, "Where am I?" And I was like, "Yeah, I don't know." Because all I could see was black. There was like nothing there other than this voice. And so I began to hear at that point my husband calling my name. So he walks into the bathroom. I'm lying on the floor. He said, "Your eyes are wide open and they're black." So it's as though my body is registering I'm in the dark. My pupils are dilated. But at that particular time, I'm unconscious and looking into the darkness. And so he's confused, like, you're laying on the floor, your eyes are open, but you're like not responding. And I came out of it totally freaked out because I had ceased to exist. There was no Pam. There was no, I was in London at the time. There was no flat in London. There was nothing. It was just this voice asking the question and then some aspect of my being answering. So subsequently, and it took me years to kind of piece it together. Well, first of all, I went to the doctor and said, "What's wrong with me?" And they didn't know. And so, because I just thought I chalked it up to a physical experience of fainting. That's what I thought it was. I didn't realize it was a spiritual experience because I wasn't spiritual at all at the time. Looking back, I can see like my whole life shifted in that moment. And I went from being completely outer oriented. It clearly marked a shift to the inner world. And it was at that point that I began recording dreams. I began all this inner work, and just like everything, started doing yoga, had body work. I mean, all kinds of things. So it was kind of the universe redirecting me for sure.
Yeah.
And in that moment, the only way I could kind of put it together, and I'm not sure that's what it was it felt like whatever you want to call it, God, the universe, spirit, capital S spirit, was asking the questions. And my soul was answering, and my ego was unconscious.
Yes. It's so funny because I've done a lot of reading on these subjects, and there's a woman, maybe you know, her name is escaping me. I'm sorry. For our listener at home, I'll figure it out and put it in the show notes. But basically, she had a stroke, and her ego, do you know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, I don't know her name, but it's Stroke of Insight. Stroke of Insight is the video, the TED Talk.
Okay, yeah. So then exactly. So her ego died or like went away, and she was able to operate from this other perspective. And then Eckhart Tolle, who I talk about all the time on the show, he had a similar experience where his ego died, and then he was able to, talk from or be basically his soul speaking to us as opposed to just the ego. And, when you were talking, that made me realize or made me think about, the role of the observer. So for people who haven't heard about this, I would assume that, like if people are listening to this show, they're probably familiar with some of these terms that we're talking about. But essentially, you were being the observer of your own mind, right? Is that how you kind of look at it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we're kind of taught to sit behind, like in this, when you do spiritual development and you learn all this stuff, you realize that, your mind is a tool. You don't need to believe everything you think. You don't, your mind is just like essentially to help you navigate the world. But if you can observe it, you can redirect it. And also you can learn to not identify with yourself, as Pam or as Lauren, right? So that would have been a pretty huge shift for you to have if you hadn't had experience or even familiarized yourself with that kind of world before. I couldn't even imagine how that would have changed everything for you. Yeah.
Yeah, you just disappeared. In a subsequent awakening, I thought a really interesting way of describing it was, to look at the ego as the story of me. And so from the time we're born, we're conditioned to believe that this is who I am. I'm Pam. This is my body. These are my beliefs. This is my family. And I could see that idea of the story is what kind of went away. There was no story of Pam. It didn't exist. It wasn't in a place and time. And so that, I believe, is what gets dropped. And so when you're living from the soul, you're not living from the story. You're living from that kind of pure essence of yourself that incarnates into this world.
I interviewed on one of my other episodes, Robert Schwartz, and he wrote the book, Your Soul's Gift and Your Soul's Plans. Have you read those books?
No.
Okay, they're really, I would recommend it. But basically what he was talking about, one of his books, and I had a huge problem with this. I brought it up on the show because he was talking about the fact that, we have a soul's plan before we come here. So we have like these different, challenges that we've, set ourselves up for and whatnot. And he was talking about how we are a soul, right? And then our personality, I'm not using his language. I'm trying to make it a little bit more simplify, but, basically the personality is almost like an arm of that soul. And then that's me, Lauren, the personality. And then when you die, that personality essentially dissolves because you are just your soul, right? And I remember thinking, what? And my ego did not like that at all, because the whole time I think with all the spiritual work that I'm doing, that I keep thinking that, life is eternal and we never die. You know what I mean? And then to hear that the personality or the ego as I know it dies, I understood it to be true. And I had a hard time with it initially. And it's exactly what you're talking about. It's because we play these roles, we take on these, you're Pamela, you're an artist, you got a PhD, you were married, blah, blah, blah. I'm Lauren, I'm running the podcast, da, da, da. But these are just the roles that we're playing. They're not who we are behind that. And it's such you kind of understand that, when you're having arguments with people or you're getting caught up in like titles and bullshit like that it's just none of it matters. Hey, sorry, going off dreams right now, but it's a big subject. Any thoughts?
Well, yeah. So one of the ways that I talk to clients and in courses that I teach is I talk about it in terms of, I believe that there's two trajectories. That when your soul has before it incarnates, it looks at your parents' lineage, your mother and your father, and it says these are the issues that both of those ancestral lines are going to bring into this particular moment or this particular physical body, this person.
Right.
So okay. I believe that we know what the essence of our soul is and what we believe it has the ability to resolve. So the strength of our soul, so those of us who had the stronger souls came in to do big work and to transform heavy ancestral lines, and that our strength is what made us choose these difficult lifetimes.
Right.
And that we then, as we transform it, although the soul may leave and the personality stays behind, in that time that we're able to transform the consciousness that we are here, it's going back through the lineage. It's going forward, and you're changing the future trajectory of those two lines because you are the point of resolution.
Yeah, when I read that book, there was a lot of messaging about how strong we are to be here and to have taken on these challenges and how we're the courageous, and I don't know in a way my ego was like, oh, cool. But on the other flip side, I was like, yeah, but I don't want to do all this work,
Yeah, right. Yeah, totally. Because I've said when I was like young, my mother believed in reincarnation. And I was like, oh, I'm not ever coming back.
That's what I
no
said.
way.
No, this is my last go at this.
Yeah, that's what I said. And apparently a lot of us do. Like I knew from a young age, I was like, I am not coming back. No way. This is it for me. Last lifetime, message to the universe. Hey, I got it. I'm not coming back. So for sure. I wondered, like, did that turn the volume up? Should I not have said that? Should I have sprung it on him at 98 instead of 13 when they were like, okay, give her everything now?
Yeah, that's so funny. But then you might have really been screwed and you might have been coming back because you need the, although time's an illusion, you need the, you need the time essentially to be able to process and also to help create change and serve other people. I mean, that's what it's about as well, right? Because when you understand this stuff and you can articulate it in ways that are accessible to people or give them tools like through dreaming, which we're going to get into, you need time to do the work because those people also need time to figure out what the hell you're talking about and connect with their soul on that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think for me, the way I've often talked about it was like in the beginning, it's much more difficult and much more traumatic to be doing the work. And as time goes by, although you tend to be taking on more and processing at much deeper levels, I always say the length, like when you first start out, it's like you're on the top of a mountain and you crash into this deep valley and then to the top of a mountain, then crash into a deep valley. But it just, as time goes on, it kind of gets, the peaks and valleys kind of get smaller and smaller and it doesn't last as long and you kind of get better at navigating it and not so, and you don't have the drama as much as you do at the beginning.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, you're right. That's actually such a beautiful way of putting that, Pamela. I love that. And I think that, when you were saying that, I was going, that I can see that from my own journey, how it was like really hard and then got a little bit easier and then hard again. And then, but I think that a lot of the progress and I guess a lot of it becoming easier is because I'm more clear, at least for my own self, on compassion, on self-love, on forgiveness, and understanding that I'm doing the best I can. And, I think a lot, years before I probably didn't have that compassion for my journey in the same way.
Yeah, we probably reduce our resistance as time goes too.
Yeah, you're
because
right.
Initially it's so, everything is so unfamiliar and you don't know, like, how is this gonna work? I know when I first started processing emotion through the dreams, but I began working with it, I was afraid. I was like, how deep is this anger? How big is this gonna get?
Yeah.
And I had to find a way to deal with clearing the anger in myself that was in a way that was safe. And I felt contained because I was doing it all by myself because I was using the dreams. And I was like, I didn't know. Now I'm not afraid of it because I've done enough work with it. But in the beginning, I was like, how deep is this grief? How long is it going to go on? I used to joke about it and say, man, I should have taken out stock and Kleenex before I started this journey because I can't even imagine how much Kleenex I've gone through.
Right. Wow. Okay. So let's get into the subject of dreams because, the episodes are only an hour and I actually could probably talk to you for days on this subject. So I really need let's redirect and then maybe we can have another episode another time and we can talk about this, other subjects because there's definitely a lot to go into and it's hard when you just scratch the surface. So let's talk about dreaming because I guess when you were talking about dreaming just then, you were talking about essentially doing some healing in your dreams. So first of all, I guess we need to probably start a little bit at the beginning because not everybody remembers their dreams. So I'm just kind of wondering, has that always been something that you've been able to do? Remember your dreams?
I don't even know. Because what happened for me again was that spiritual experience happened. And then after that, I started writing down my dreams. And the only reason I did was because I was doing Julia Cameron's The Artist Way.
Oh, yes.
And she has you're supposed to write those 3 stream of consciousness pages every day.
Morning pages. Yeah.
Yeah. I was living in London and my husband was at work all day and I wasn't working and I had nothing to write. I was like at a loss day after day. So finally one day I remembered a dream and I started writing them down. And so then I began to get curious. like, what is this all about? What are, I had some disturbing dreams, like most of us do at the beginning, especially, where, tidal waves and earthquakes and tornadoes and just, crazy stuff. And, teeth falling out and all that.
Yeah.
So that was really for me. And I was writing them down only because of the morning pages, because otherwise I wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like one of those interesting, fateful things that starts. You think it's because you're just doing the morning pages, but life probably had another plan for me.
Yeah.
And before then, I remember one dream. That's all I remember from anything before that time is one dream. So right. I don't know if I was a dreamer or not. I don't remember.
Right. I guess, for me, my dreams are the same. Like, I don't really remember them. I remember glimpses, but I do remember some significant dreams, I guess, about loved ones, which we can go into, shortly here. But yeah, I've never really paid much attention, I guess.
And I think most people don't, because, they seem chaotic, they don't make sense, or they could be overwhelming, and they could be like nightmares. And so because our mind, we're conditioned to think logically and rationally. We wake up from the dream and it doesn't make sense. And, you talk to people, I heard an interview with Natalie Portman, who I believe her degree is from Harvard in psychology.
Yeah, it is.
And they said, what do dreams mean? And she said, nothing. And I was like, what? What did she just say? Oh my God. Yeah. So that's like the prevailing sentiment in psychology. And when I was doing a graduate degree, when I first started in counseling psychology, I asked every professor. I was like, what do dreams mean? What do dreams mean? What do they mean? What do they mean? Nobody could answer me until they had a 1 credit course on dreams. And that just was the key, because they are symbolic. And symbolic, now see, this goes back to the stroke of insight woman, because she said that one side of her brain thinks differently than the other side of her brain. And so the way I think of it is, the dream is addressing your soul. It's not addressing your head and your mind and your intellect. It's speaking to your soul, because it wants to give information to your soul so you can shift out of the ego and into the soul.
Right. Okay. So, what about dreams that, just seem to be processing what we've thought about that day? Or, like, do all dreams have significant meaning? Or is it possible that some of them actually don't, and that it's just our mind also processing stuff? Because if we have two minds, and it's Jill Bolte Taylor, by the way, I just looked it up.
Yeah.
If we have the soul mind and we have the ego mind, let's just say, to keep it, clear, isn't it possible that they're both doing the talking in a dream?
I never really thought about it that way. I guess I see, because I see the ego as the story and the ideas that we get out of the story, and we stop identifying with the story. Yeah. I see it as some aspect of you that I don't know what this source is. I don't know what the dream source is. Is the dream source like that voice in my head that said, who am I and where am I? That's kind of source that I see making and creating your dreams every night, and speaking to the soul.
Right. And
so what it's trying to do is loosen up, I think, the bonds of that ego, in order to allow you to live from that place, which, whatever you want to call it, your heart or your soul or whatever. But when I first started working with dreams, I worked with every dream I had every single night. And I could take a fragment, 2 words, and turn it into like a major revelation. So the way that I explain it is that your dreams will take the content from the day and symbolize it in order to create the dream.
Right.
So if you're like, people will say, I don't dream about anything because my dreams are all about work. And I say, well, you're working a lot, and your dreams are using your work as the framework to create the dream, but it's probably not about your job. I mean, occasionally it might be, but there's probably something deeper going on there. And so that's why it often seems like, well, I'm just dreaming about this, because again, that's the literal mind.
Right. It's giving you the story, the lesson, the healing, or whatever in a context you'd understand. Because if all of a sudden I start dreaming about living in a totally different country that I've never lived in before, I won't understand what's happening. Whereas if it paints me the picture of, so for me, I have a lot of, if I have nightmares, which I rarely do, but if I have anything that's like uncomfortable or scary, it's pretty much always involving me being in heights, like a height on a cliff, or can't get down a ladder or whatever, right? So that might be a significant, it might be telling me on some level I'm afraid of taking a risk, or I'm, right? Like, is that kind of where you're going with this?
Yeah, the dream, the way that I like to talk about it is that I think that the dream source is interacting with you directly. So it's creating these dreams for you every night to give you a message and to get you to shift something or become aware of something. And I call it a dream dictionary. It's building a dream dictionary, a vocabulary between you and your source. It's going to be specific to you. So when I would have a dream about being in a car and I'd be pressing on the brake and the car wouldn't stop, as soon as I wake up from that dream, which I've had repetitively, I know I'm caught in doing an activity and I need to slow down. I need to stop. And I'm in, somewhat of an addictive pattern of doing stuff.
Right.
And I'm not recognizing I'm in that pattern. So the dream comes, and as soon as I have the dream, I know, they're telling me stop. I got to slow down.
Yes.
So just to touch on your dream for a moment, what might be worth considering with that. Can I offer a possible?
Yeah.
Okay. So sometimes what that indicates is coming up is a way of coping by coming into the head. So thinking about something. And so the coming down is having to learn how to come back into the body. And so usually it's around grounding, or that kind of descent, like from up here above the head, like down into the physical form.
That's interesting. When you said that, I got goosebumps. I can tell you that I have very limited experiences with feeling in my actual body, if that makes sense.
That's exactly what. Yeah.
Yes, I remember I went to I was in a yoga class one day, and the teacher's like, ground your feet, and I'm like, I can't feel my feet. Which sounds ridiculous. And she goes, lift your toes. And that really helped me a lot. But there are times in my life, and not many, where I have felt actually in my body, on the ground. I felt my height. But aside from that, I do feel like I'm constantly hovering above.
And so your dreams are trying to encourage you to make that shift. So I call what I do embodied dream work for exactly this reason. So what we do is when we get, like, if you came to me with that dream, what we would do is we would go into the body, and we close our eyes in the session. We say, where does that feeling, sensation that's associated with the dream live in your body? And so I typically use the chakras and start with the lower chakras, and we move up the chakras. So let's just say your dream high up, like you need to get down, you need to climb down, and the stairs are rickety, or the stairs are too far apart, or something, and you're afraid you're going to fall. So what is the feeling associated with that? Do you know?
Right. Oh, for me, it would be anxiety, for sure, in my solar plexus.
So what we would do is we go to the solar plexus. This is interesting because it ties back to it. We become the witness. That's all we do, is we become the witness to the sensation. And that's how you transform consciousness. So the dream is coming, and it's saying it's trying to release the feeling. So beyond that, what has happened is probably that was a coping mechanism developed in childhood as a way to deal with some kind of difficult situation. And so as I was saying earlier too, that we become uncomfortable with dealing with emotion, where we're never really taught how to do that. And so as part of dream work, that's what I do, is I take people in and show them all we have to do is witness the sensation in the body. So what happens is the dream comes So you'll have patterns that were developed in childhood that you will see throughout your entire lifetime. So you'll have a pattern. Let's say something happens in childhood. Let's say your father is pushing you on the swing. He says, okay, jump, I'm going to catch you. And you accidentally slip out of his hand and you fall to the ground. So what will happen is that creates the pattern. So going back to your friend who is the author, who said, right, we have these things that we're clearing.
Yeah.
So you get the pattern, you'll see the patterns repeating throughout your whole life, whether it's with your boss, whether it's with your partner, whether it's with your mother, anybody. It will keep repeating. And the dream comes and it says symbolically, okay, come down into this and feel this. So we'll depict it symbolically. And then because I understand symbolism, I can find the patterns. So I would say, okay, can you tell me a situation, earliest memory you have of when you expected someone to be there for you, but they weren't? And then you would say, oh my God, my dad, and when I was a little girl, and he did this, and he missed me, and he didn't catch me. And so I would say, okay, where do you feel that in your body? And we would go into it together.
Right. Fascinating.
We're connected, so I can feel what you have going on. So we do it together. We go into the body and we witness the sensation until it evolves. That releases the energy from your body. So the energy and memory is stored in your physical form. And so by witnessing it, it releases the energy. It releases the pattern. So you don't have to live the pattern anymore.
Right. Okay. Whoa. Okay. Yeah. So like, just, full disclosure, I guess. So I remember one of my earliest memories ever, I must've been probably 3, was I was left in a car and like someone needed to run in and grab something. So I was just, strapped in the car and I didn't want to be left in there, and the car rolled back a little bit. And so that actually came to me when you were talking about that, because I think that probably would have been an experience of feeling powerless and trapped and unable to, anyway, I don't know if that is part of it, but that was kind of what I thought of when you said that.
So what happens is sometimes these experiences were experienced, and there was no one there to validate the feeling or the emotion. Or it could be like your parents came out in a panic and oh my God, and they grabbed you and you're okay. But your experience wasn't like processed in the moment.
Right.
So it becomes something. Yeah. So you become like you really like freedom. It really matters to you to be free and to not have like limitations. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
One thing I will say to our listener at home, though, is that we do have a really powerful episode through the Afterlight, which is all about feeling and processing emotions with Pauline Pullard. So I'll put a link to that. And then obviously, Pamela, you clearly showcased the fact that you do this kind of work as well. And I'll put a link to the show notes to your stuff, because that was really, really cool. The other thing that I just want to bring up about what you just brought up is witnessing the emotion without feeling the emotion, because I understand what you mean by that. And what you mean by that is you are not the emotion, because that's the problem, isn't it? That's why people don't want to heal. That's why people don't want to go through all this stuff, is because they think that's who they are, instead of realizing that, oh yeah, interesting, I've got anxiety right now. Okay, I'm just going to breathe that in and let that go. Instead, we think, oh, I am anxious. Is that correct? And that's something I'm still working through myself, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. I find going into the sensation is an easier way to abstract, because if we get caught in the emotion, then people can go into their story. They can go, I'll keep having to pull them out of the story and back into the body. Okay, right, here we are again in the story, but no, like, where's the feeling? And so what you'll notice is that, people sometimes come into the story as a way to get out of the feeling and to avoid it. So I say lots of times, what is the sensation? So like you mentioned, the solar plexus is where you feel it. But what does it actually look like? Like, what does it feel like? Is it like hard, or is it soft? Is it big, or is it small? Is it like a tingly sensation, or is it You know, if you really like,
Oh,
even,
because then you're honing in on the feeling instead of what caused it or yeah, I see. You're really having to observe the feeling. It's almost like you're narrowing down and you've got a microscope and you're looking deep into it to really fully feel it. Oh, that's
so
cool.
you, and so you can do it like with anxiety or whatever. So lots of times I think anxiety maybe in the chest, right? So you would bring your full awareness to the chest. And what we do is the way that we work with it is not about changing it. It's not about sending it like sparkles and turning it into butterflies and watching it fly away. You know, it's really about being there for it. And the way that I describe it is, it's like you're going into your inner child. And this is your inner child and really their feeling that you're
Right.
still feeling. And so it's like you go to your inner child is anxious. And so if your child is anxious, you're not going to say, okay, come on, hurry up, turn it into butterflies and sparkles and let it kind of float away.
Yeah.
You're going to say, I see you. I hear you. You're feeling anxious. And I'm going to sit with you. And I'm going to just be with you and allow the anxiety to be there. And so you become aware of like, okay, so how wide is it? What does it look like? What does it seem like? And you just allow it and accept it. So that's it didn't happen in childhood, was that someone wasn't sitting with you as you processed what you were
Right.
feeling or mirrored it or witnessed it.
Wow, that's fascinating. So, would you recommend that people essentially start writing down their dreams to help them remember? And then is that kind of, I guess I'm for our listener at home, especially, what if they feel like, yeah, but do I really need to do that? I mean, I guess it's about self-development. Do you want to improve? Do you want to work through this stuff or not? Is that right?
You know, so one of the interesting things is, I think because I didn't walk into dreams with any kind of dogma, so I didn't kind of walk into it and say, this is who I am. I'm a Freudian or I'm a Jungian or anything like that. I just went in with an open mind and said, what are they and what are they showing me? So over the
Right.
course of these years that I've worked with them and worked with other people, the breadth of information that you are getting every single night is astonishing. It is telling you about your diet. They told me I was vegetarian. They told me to become vegan. They told me not to eat eggs that weren't free range. They told me to take herbs. They tell me what supplements to take. They tell me everything about exercise. They tell me about my relationships. They prepare me for what's going to happen. They prepare me for my dog who is going to die. They prepared me for my grandmother who is going to die. They were preparing her for the fact that she was going to die. So we had
Oh,
dialogues about it. So ancestors have come back in my dreams and have been obviously helping me to resolve issues and things. And then the dreams end up in life and things happen in life that are out of the dreams. And it's all interconnected. But you get so much personal information about you in your life, in your development on every single level, past lives, your career, your relationships, your children, your everything, your dogs, your pets, yeah.
wow. So I guess when you were talking there, I was just thinking to myself about someone who's listening who's going, yeah, but I don't remember my dreams. So would you think a good way to get started is if the only thing you remember is there was a tree, that you just write that down, there was a tree, and then eventually over time that your recall will grow? I mean, is it about intention?
Yeah. So that's typically what we suggest, is to write them down, write anything, even if it's a feeling or if it's a sensation. I woke up and my stomach was bothering me, a headache, whatever. You write down anything that you get. Before you go to sleep at night, you just say, I'm going to remember my dreams when I wake up in the morning, and I'm going to write them down. And you just have something beside your bed to record, whether it's a pad or a recording device or whatever. And then the other thing that I recommend is, so whatever your morning routine is, like if you get up in the morning, and I personally get up in the morning and I take a shower. And so when I'm in the shower, I pay attention to what I'm thinking. My thoughts are connected to my dreams. So when I do remember my
Oh,
dream, I just realize later, I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I was thinking about that in the shower and now I'm working on the dream and that's all connected. So if you don't remember the dream, if you just say like, okay, what's coming to mind as I begin my daily routine, whatever it is, making your coffee, having your coffee, just paying attention to that. And then the other thing is too, that like I recently started doing couples dream work. So you could even use it in a relationship as a way to deepen your relationship, learn how to witness each other's emotions. And then if you have something like that and you're dreaming with your family or your partner, then getting up in the morning and just saying, hey, did you dream last night? What did you dream?
Right. Oh, I love that. It's so cool. One thing I will tell you as well, Pamela, is that I've been taking fish oil for the last year and a half or something. And since then, I dream like almost every night. I don't always remember it because I don't write it down, but I know that I do. And fish oil for me has been a significant enhancement. Have you ever heard of that happening?
I heard somebody told me about a vitamin B. I don't know which one it was, but
Yeah.
they'd heard that vitamin B will do that as well. But like I said, I don't remember which one it
Yeah.
was.
Well, that really helped me.
So it's entirely possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about I'm just going to bring it up one more time and then we'll move along. But in Robert Schwartz's books, he does talk about basically he has a medium, right? And they channel souls and stuff like that and spirit guides, and they basically witness your soul's plan, like you making the decisions. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is because sometimes people who are here on earth like us, their soul actually is in the meeting when that person is sleeping. I thought that was really cool because it's basically talking about that our soul leaves our body and goes and does work elsewhere. So can you talk to me a little bit about, maybe your experiences with connecting with people who have passed before? I know that, you were talking a lot about healing that you can get from dreams. So do you think that happens when we go to these other areas or other realms? Do you think we even leave our body? I mean, yeah, thoughts on that?
Yeah. So yeah, there's like 20 ways I could go with that.
Sorry, that's a big question.
That's okay. In terms of dealing with people outside, I know I went to visit my grandmother who did eventually pass away. And in the dream, I landed on her bed and I rumpled it because I knew that she would realize later I had been there, because I came out of her bedroom and she was in the living room. And my sense of it was that it wasn't like she could see me, but that she would know, like have the feeling like I was there. And then she would walk back into her bedroom and see that the bedding was rumpled and know that in fact she was right, that I had been there. So right. I definitely see that it seems to me like you do go to other realms when you're sleeping. And, most of us have had experiences where, you're flying outside of your body. And that happened once. And I was like, oh my God, am I going to be able to get back in? And so I turned around and came right back and went in. So, right. So that it does, I definitely believe that there is a component of that. And then when my grandmother died, also the first dream she came, and I was sitting on the bed again, laying on the bed, and she's sitting on the edge of it. And I said, oh, I miss you. And she said, why? And I said, well, because you're gone. And she said, gone where? And I said, wow. Gone. And she said, I haven't gone anywhere. I'm right here. And I was like, yeah, but not really. And she stuck her hand out and she said, feel me. And I reached out and touched her hand and I was like, oh, because it was solid. And I just read the other day, Thich Nhat Hanh, and he said a very similar thing with his own mother, that he was grieving her loss and then realized like she isn't gone anywhere. She's with him. So I think to some degree, I kind of don't like try to understand everything because
well, you can't. You're a human.
Really know. Yeah.
You have a human mind. I mean, even though we know, and I think that's part of the frustrating parts, honestly, is that sometimes we know better. Like, why am I getting so wrapped up in this? Or why can't I understand? And some things you don't need to. It just is magical, okay? Right?
Yeah, for sure. I had one too with my great grandmother. and she wanted to give me an origami bird in the dream. So when I came out of the dream, I'm asking everybody in my family, like, oh, did great grandma have origami birds? Like, she wants me to have it. Like, if anybody knows of this. And they're all like, no, we don't know anything about it. And I was like, okay. And then I was in California at the Chopra Center, and we did we had this one experience where we were dancing to these drummers and stuff. And so we dance around and we come back and we sit in our seats. And I had decided like that I was going to just like let it go and just let myself be really free. And I did. And I really let myself just crazy dance. And I sit down, and this old guy comes and sits down beside me, and he goes, well, what just happened? And I said, well, we were, dancing to these drummers. And he said, oh, I left as soon as the music started. And I said, oh. And he said, and I have something for you. And he reached in his pocket and he pulled out an origami bird, and the little wings just flapped up and down. I was like, oh, my grandmother. Yeah.
Well, how did he react? Did you explain the significance of that, or you just allowed it to be? Wow.
Yeah.
It's so cool. I think that, what I'm getting out of this conversation is that, well, obviously a lot, but the more that we can get to know our dreams, the more that we can understand the personal messages for us, the greater we can work through the things that we need to work on and get through them, so we can get on to the other stuff that's more fun. Right? Because if we're being held back in some way, like for me, I get anxiety quite a bit. So for me, it would be significant for me to be able to feel that, process that emotion, get it free, and then move along with my day, like with my life, basically. Right.
Yeah. So, yeah. And the other thing is too, in terms of like anxiety, is that it can often be an indication that something is not in alignment. So it would be interesting to see, is there a particular trigger? Like for me, and I don't really get anxiety, but I did develop anxiety when I was going to grad school for counseling psychology. And I did not like it. I didn't like counseling psychology. I didn't want to put labels on people. Right. It just never felt right to me. And that is when I had anxiety. It was when I kept going, even though it just didn't feel right for me. My friends were like, oh, just stay with it. Just get the degree. Then you can do whatever you want. And something inside of me was just like, no. And so, I think too, that those kinds of things, the anxiety, we don't always see it as information about telling us something. So the anxiety wants your attention. It's getting you to stop. Like, why? What is it trying? What does your soul want to do? Is it out of alignment in some way?
Yeah. For me, I know that if I have a future thinking thought, whatever it may be, that's what normally causes my anxiety, because I'm not where I am, if that makes sense. So that's an interesting observation. I like that you've brought that up, because because I know that a lot of people, like, it's a very common thing that a lot of people struggle with that. But if they're paying attention to, the symbolism, or like, what it's triggering, what it's telling you, that's so significant, isn't it? Even with making decisions. If I imagine making that decision, am I getting anxiety? If I imagine making that decision, am I feeling light as a bird, right? So looking at those. So, there are books that have dream meanings and things like that. Would you say that it's really actually more important that you get to know your own significant meaning? I mean, you picked up on some things from me, from what I told you. So would I have been able to find a similar response potentially in a dream dictionary, or do you recommend people make their own?
So sometimes, because we're not really used to thinking symbolically, so sometimes you can get started with a dream book. And like if you look at like Ted Andrews, and he does the spirit animals and the totem animals and that kind of thing. That's a great way to look at the symbolism of animals, because a lot of us will have things in dreams that we really don't have any kind of associations with. It may be something that you're just not familiar with. So sometimes that can definitely add another layer, another level of component to it and information. But ideally what we want to do is look at our own experience of it. So your dream, just like teeth falling out is a common dream. So it's because I've worked with so many, I can sometimes generalize and have an idea of
Right.
possibly what it means. But ideally, the more that you work with them, you can speak. So you speak to the dream, you can speak to the dream source like it's a person. You could say, I need to know more about this situation, or you gave me this dream and I don't understand what it means. Give it to me another way that I will understand.
Right.
So you want to have that, there's going to be this dialogue. We don't always see it that way, but it really is. They're trying to get your attention because they want to interact with you, right? They want to help you. They want to guide you.
Yeah. And that comes back to what you were saying before, where you go, I'm setting the intention before I go to bed. I'm going to remember my dream. And I read the book, The Power of the Subconscious Mind, such a fabulous read. And it was, the author, Joseph Murphy, was talking about, you need to give your subconscious things to do. So, ask it to work out something for you in your dream, or ask it. So, and maybe he's talking about spirit, but he framed it in the subconscious way. So I guess it's however you look at it. But essentially you're setting an intention for what you need to get out of your dream, right?
You can. It's one thing you can do. I'm more than being directive, I'm more receptive. That's just how the stance I have taken. And because I'm blown away on a regular basis by the information that they give me. They're just like, one dream I had that was a big map on the floor and on the ground, and I was all excited because I'm like, oh, this is my home state and this is where I was born and right here, and I don't know why I was so excited about, but apparently I was. And so I'm all excited. So then he's like, okay, yeah. So I walk away, and this other guy comes up to me, and he has a eclipse, a solar eclipse in his hand, and he throws it at me, and it goes right into my third eye.
Wow.
And I'm like, whoa. So I wasn't born in a state in the United States. I was born when the solar eclipse happened. And so it was not literally, but so the sun represents spirit, and the soul represents the moon. So when those two things come together, spirit and the soul, a soul is born.
Wow, that's beautiful.
I think spirit is inspire. So it was like, wow, yeah. So the story is born when you incarnate, but we are born when the soul and spirit come together. And then subsequently with other dreams, I dreamt about the solar eclipse on the back of the Bindu chakra, and it was like all about rebirth. And I was like, whoa, like, oh my God, like that's crazy.
That's so cool. It's no wonder you're a poet. Like when you're talking about these things, the visions that you get, or the scenes, or you know what I mean? The feelings and stuff like that. It's wonderful that you're able to express yourself through poetry, I think, to make sense of some of that, because you can tell there's like amazing stories to be found within those experiences.
The poetry is channeled, actually. Their
Okay.
messages, it's all messages from the other realm. It's phenomenal stuff. I love it. It's insanely good.
Do you meditate and then get these messages, or do you get them from your dream and you wake up and write them down?
Not even the dreams. No, I'll just get like, sometimes it's like a phrase will kind of start in my head, and then sometimes it takes me a while to catch on, and I'm like, oh yeah, like, so I'll sit down and just pick up a pen and I'll just go boom, 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 boom,
right.
boom, boom, and the poem's done.
I remember Wayne Dyer, I was listening to him one time talking. He was saying that, if you wake up at 3 a.m, that there's work for you to do, and you should get up and get a pen, or, and start writing, and that there's like things for you to figure out. And I wonder, in a way, if we all did that every time we woke up, we wrote down our, the different messages we were getting. And even if you go back to bed, then at least they're there to recall. And yeah, because really these are opportunities for us to be channeled where we're not so full of, trying to figure out what we're doing later, or what I'm having for dinner, or who said what to me, or where I'm going, right? Where you're in this flow sense of clarity. And that's what it sounds like you get into when you're also writing your poetry.
It's fascinating because it's basically spiritual poetry, and it's evolving now to be more about the divine feminine, which is the work that I predominantly do.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's fascinating because it's spiritual. So it's like, it talks about where I am. It talks about where I'm going. And other people, pick up the same thing from it. So it evolves over time, like dreams do. So if you have significant dreams and you work with them, and then I have dreams that I've been working with for years and years and years, because sometimes it takes years to embody the teaching that's contained in the dream.
Right. Or to be able to put it into practice. Is that kind of what you mean?
Well, so let's just say you have a big dream and it's giving you a vision about where you're going. Yeah. And then it may take time. So what they'll subsequently do is the dreams will say, okay, now let's work on this, and now let's work on this, and now let's work on this.
Your
taking you there.
And that's one of the benefits of understanding what your dreams are telling you, is that it's essentially going, hey Pam, hey Lauren, here's your path, girls, follow it and you'll get to where you need to go. Whereas if we're not paying attention to the signs and the symbols and the things that, are the messages our heart whispers and the feelings that our body's giving us, we could go off track where things aren't flowing in the same way.
Yeah, it's all, and it's what you learn too is the seamlessness of the reality. With this idea that we're in the body, but in fact, your aura, which is the soul, is outside the body, and we are connected and picking up other things from other people.
Wow, fascinating. We're already at our hour, Pam. I'm sure this happens all the time.
Pretty quick.
Yeah, it did. It went so quick. I feel like we just scratched the surface. So I would really love to have you back on the show, maybe in the next, 6 months or something like that. If you would be open to that,
I would love that.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah. We can take a different direction, or we can, talk a little bit more about this subject as well. I understand that you also have a freebie for our listeners at home, which I can put a link to that. Can you tell me a bit about that?
Yeah, I put together a little dream guide and template. So to get started, it kind of give you tips on like remembering the way we talked about, what to write down. If you're going to do one thing with your dreams, you should probably just work on the emotional aspect of it, because that's what usually gets you.
Oh,
if you can't get to the meaning.
Yeah, okay.
You can't get to the meaning of it. You can at least access the emotion and transform it that way. So you're still working with it. And I did a little template that shows, like, it's just the way that I do it, what I write down, and prompts to try and help you remember and stuff like that. So they can email me at Pamela at Wisdom of the Swan. That's my website. And I'd be happy to send it out.
Wonderful. Well, I'll definitely be getting a copy of that myself, because it sounds great. And you've definitely showcased a lot of the benefits with, understanding your dreams are essentially to help you live your best life here. And, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably believe in all this stuff. So it's the way that spirit is connecting with your soul to say, hey, this is how we're going to guide you along, because, you want to do the work now so you don't have to come back. And I think sometimes I can say for me, my experience is that I think there's probably fear in doing the work, but, doing it in maybe your dream state is a little bit more safe.
Your dreams only give you what you can handle. That's the way. So that's one of the reasons I love working with people through dreams. So I try not to work with people unless they bring their dreams, because I say, this is getting us, down into what's underneath it and what's really going on. Yeah. And it takes us in a way that you're ready for it, in the way that you can handle. But I don't want to imply that dreams are necessarily only for inner work, because they're also putting you on your soul's path. And so, we're all as a collective evolving, and we all have a part to play in the evolution of consciousness that's happening right now. And so the dreams will help you align to whatever it is that you need to be here and what you need to be giving, and they'll help prepare you for that gift and what you're here to share. I mean, it's just, again, it just, I didn't have any talent. And then I discover I'm an artist in my dreams because I'm dreaming of art classes, and they start going to classes and they're like, you're gifted. I was like, what? I mean, I can't even draw. What do you mean I'm gifted?
Wow.
So they're taking us by the hand because they want us all to work together towards creating this new earth that, Eckhart Tolle talks about.
Yeah.
So they're preparing us and helping us every night. In addition to everything that happens in your life, it's one seamless reality. You can look at, if you can't remember your dreams, you can look at the events in your life like a dream, and you can work with them in exactly the same way.
That's so well put, and that's so well said. And yeah, I love that. And I love, just coming back to the thing as well, which is that, your dreams are for you. That's what you were talking about at the beginning. They're for you. They're not for anyone else. They're for you. And so it's like, your own little secret recipe. It's your own private world. It's your own relationship with yourself.
And we need you.
Yeah.
We need everybody. We need everybody to get on board, and we need to turn the ship around and we can do this together. And I mean, nothing will give you hope more and make you believe that all things are possible than seeing what your dreams have in store for you.
That's a perfect way to end. Thank you so much for being on the show today, Pamela. I will leave all your links that you've given me in the show notes as well, so our listeners at home can connect with you. And also, I look forward to having you back on the show, because I know we'll have a great conversation, whatever direction we choose to go in. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to the episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave us a review where you listen to your podcasts and share it with your friends. Thank you. New episodes every Thursday.